Enough is enough. You're just like a stranger. Let's just throw you out into the yard. Wait, please! Grabbing my arm, they literally threw me into the yard. I heard the sliding door slam shut behind me, and I felt the blood drain from my face in despair. Enough is enough! You're just like a stranger. Let's just throw you out into the yard. Were my parents-in-law really expecting me to live out here in the yard? They locked the door from the inside, leaving me completely lost. I thought about going back to my parents' house, but it was quite a distance away, and I didn't have enough money for the fare. Just as my mind went blank, the door flew open with a loud bang. I hoped they had changed their minds, but the voice that came back was cold as ice. Eat. My mother-in-law Madison handed me a box of emergency ration cup noodles. Seeing the box placed on the ground, I was convinced they were serious. No, please! Wait! My desperate plea fell on deaf ears as the door slammed shut in front of me. If something happens to me, they'll be the ones in trouble. Maybe if I throw away the contents, they'll give me proper food. In desperation, I decided to throw away everything inside. In a fit of frustration, I opened the box roughly, finding it packed with cup noodles. Wait. One of them had a half-open lid. I reached out cautiously and picked up that particular cup noodle. No way, this is. My name is Tracy Thomas. I'm a housewife in my 40s. For the 20 years since I married my husband Kevin, I've been struggling with something. It's... Kevin, I always tell you to put away your clothes. The living room was littered with clothes Kevin had just tossed around after coming home from work. Kevin had this habit of changing out of his work clothes and just dropping them on the floor. Even now, despite my request, he lay on the sofa, scrolling through his phone. Not only that, he was playing videos at full volume and laughing loudly. Maybe because I interrupted his relaxation time, he spoke in a tone that made it clear he found it all very annoying. It's not a big deal. You're always so nitpicky. It's not bothering anyone. It's bothering me. Huh? Why are you in such a bad mood over something so trivial? Nobody likes a hysterical old woman. What are you gonna do if you get more wrinkles? The unprovoked insult made me frown deeply. Yes, I was utterly fed up with Kevin's condescending words and attitude. But that wasn't the only problem. It's really a small thing. Just put your clothes in the laundry basket, that's all I'm asking. Ugh. This is why I hate nagging women. You're so dependent on my earnings. Do you even realize you can't live without me? Kevin grumbled sarcastically, then suddenly shouted loudly for someone. Dad, Tracy says I should put my clothes away. Hey. Since it was a house, not an apartment, there were no neighbors to disturb, but loud voices carried well. Proving this, heavy footsteps echoed down the hallway, and the living room door was flung open roughly. It was my father-in-law, Kendrick. Kendrick growled lowly from his throat, glaring at me with sharp eyes. Hey! That's supposed to be your job, Tracy, not his. His voice boomed like an explosion, assaulting my ears. The intimidation made me shrink my shoulders slightly. Listen up. You married into this family, so just do what your husband says. That's how it is for women. Don't bother me or Kevin with your nonsense. I am sorry. At this point, all I can do is bow my head and apologize. Kevin watched me with a nasty grin on his face. Kendrick is a very old-fashioned man, stuck in the ways of the past. Whenever I say something about the household chores or Kevin's behavior, he gets furious and says, "You don't need to worry about that." He often raises his hand, and I've become so used to it that I instinctively flinch. Kevin has already turned his attention to a video on his phone, ignoring me completely. I felt a wave of darkness wash over me as I wondered if I just had to wait until Kendrick's anger subsided. But then, someone else called out to me. "Hey, Tracy, didn't I tell you not to use ham in the cooking?" Standing in the kitchen where I had just finished making dinner was my mother-in-law, Madison. "It's got sodium nitrite in it. It's bad for your health. Also, get rid of that weird gadget Kevin brought home. A famous author said electromagnetic waves shrink your brain." Madison doesn't argue like Kevin or shout like Kendrick. But she's certainly not on my side. Even now, she's sighing with a piece of aluminum foil in her hand, supposedly to block the brain-shrinking electromagnetic waves. She is obsessed with conspiracy theories. "I'm sorry, Madison, but we need to have enough protein." There you go again. Where's the fish from? Did you check the origin? And the additives? She is overly sensitive to the effects of electromagnetic waves and harmful food additives. Because of this, cooking takes much more effort than usual. She checks the ingredient list of every grocery item and restricts what I can use in the cooking. As a result, the meals at the Thomas household are far from healthy. I feel a pang of frustration as I think about the wasted ingredients, when she suddenly says, "By the way, Tracy, you mentioned that Kevin eats out a lot. Were you actually jealous of him?" Apparently, Kevin heard her comment. "What? Jealous?" Kevin, who had been engrossed in his video, turned to us with annoyance. "I go out for work. Unlike you, who just does housework. That's not what I meant. You live off my earnings, and you have the nerve to have an attitude?" Kevin glances at Kendrick, who looks displeased. Understanding what's about to happen, I can only desperately apologize. "I am sorry." It's true that as a housewife, I rely entirely on Kevin for our daily living expenses. The money I have is the allowance Kevin gives me, and if he's unhappy, he quickly reduces the amount. Seeing me bowing and trembling, Kevin seemed satisfied and said, "You can't do anything without me, can you?" He tossed something at me. "As punishment, you're having this for dinner." A cup noodle rolled to my feet with a light thud. No way. Even though I cook for the Thomas family every day. And household chores are far from easy. But I couldn't say anything back, and I could only remain silent. In this house, I have no freedom at all. Why am I going through this? Unable to bear staying in the living room any longer, I took my cup noodles and went back to my room. From the living room, the loud TV and Kevin's voice complaining about work could be heard. I boiled water in the kettle, but I had no appetite and I let out a heavy sigh. How can they say such hurtful things? Remembering their unreasonable words depressed me. I just asked them to correct a habit, it wasn't an unreasonable request. The more I thought about it, the darker my feelings became, wondering where I had made the wrong choice. I couldn't move for a while, weighed down by my heavy heart. As bedtime approached, and hunger became unbearable, I reluctantly ate the cup noodles and took a bath in the cold tub. If I caught a cold, I'd have to ask Kevin for money and permission to go to the doctor, so I got out quickly before my body cooled down. I tiptoed down the quiet hallway back to my room, careful not to make any noise, and secretly took out my diary from the drawer. This diary was my record of daily events to someday reveal how I was treated. When I started dating Kevin, he wasn't like this. He cherished our anniversary and birthdays, and I had never seen him speak harshly. I believed he was kind and married him, but the reality was completely different. I feel like I'm treated as something unclean in this house. This is largely influenced by Madison, who is obsessed with conspiracy theories. Unfamiliar with these theories, I was avoided because my past eating habits, which Madison disapproved of, might negatively affect her son. I had to prepare separate meals and never once joined their circle. Yet, I could secretly eat what I liked and write in my diary, which was a relief. I hope I can report this properly someday. I have wanted to seek help many times. But the thought of my parents being harmed prevents me from taking action. I have no money to escape, and even if I tried to get a job, who would hire a woman in her 40s who has been a housewife all her life? At such times, Kevin's words, "You can't live without me," hit home, and I feel tears of helplessness. In the end, unable to find a solution, I curled up in my bed and slept. The next day, there was an unusual commotion outside my room. Wondering what had happened, Kendrick hurriedly opened my door. "Hey, call an ambulance now! Kevin!" He found Kevin not breathing in bed after trying to wake him up, as he was unusually late in getting up. I frantically called an ambulance. Even though he had tormented me for years, I couldn't ignore him in a life-threatening situation. Listening to the paramedics on the phone, I desperately tried CPR, but Kevin did not come back. No way, why? He seemed fine just yesterday, so why did his condition suddenly deteriorate? The sudden event left me in shock, unable to even begin preparations for the funeral after returning from the hospital. The Thomas household was filled with an unusually heavy atmosphere. I did notice he seemed unwell lately. Did he? Kendrick murmured. Even he couldn't muster the energy to yell at me now that his son had passed away. I had no idea Kevin had been feeling so poorly. The only time we had as a family was during meals, which we often had in separate rooms, and while I was doing chores during the day, he was out at work, so we rarely saw each other. But I couldn't help but think that if I had noticed something was wrong, things might have been different. No matter how deep the rift between us was, his death was a fact that couldn't be changed. I forgot my usual demeanor and leaned forward without thinking. Then why didn't he go to the hospital? If he was that sick, there must have been signs. I told him not to go. I also told him to avoid over-the-counter medications. You never know what they might contain, Madison said in a haughty tone. It seemed that even knowing about Kevin's illness, her belief in conspiracy theories hadn't wavered. The absurdity of the situation left me feeling utterly drained. I was at a loss for words, both for Kevin, who believed his mother's words, and for Madison, who clung to baseless theories. Is that so? People tend to laugh when faced with something completely out of their control. I shook my shoulders slightly. But that was a mistake. What kind of reaction is that? A deep voice, almost as if it came from the ground, echoed in my ears. I looked up in surprise. Oh. No, that's not. What's not? You just laughed. Are you the type of person who laughs when your husband has died? I'm sorry. That wasn't my intention. I was thinking about Kevin. I had definitely made things worse. My emotions were out of control in the face of this sudden tragedy. But there was no turning back, and Madison's cold voice cut through me. Enough with the excuses. You laughed. Maybe you poisoned him, didn't you? No. I didn't do anything like that. I shook my head, almost in tears. Given how Kevin had treated me, there were plenty of reasons to suspect me. Even though Madison mostly dictated the menu, it was still me who prepared their meals. That's enough. Without Kevin, you're just a stranger. Let's throw her out into the yard. Exactly. Don't think you can ever come back into this house. Please wait. Madison grabbed my arm, and I found myself literally thrown into the yard. The sliding door slammed shut, and I felt the blood drain from my face in despair. No, this can't be. It's not true. Living in the yard was out of the question. They locked the door from the inside, and I panicked, wondering if they were serious. Without my journal, I couldn't even make a case against them. I thought about going back to my parents' house, but it was far away. I didn't have enough money for the journey. As I stood there, my mind blank, the door suddenly opened with force. Madison? Throwing me into the yard would surely attract the neighbors' attention and wouldn't look good. I hoped she had reconsidered, but the voice that responded was as cold as ever. Don't call me so casually. If something happens, it'll be a nuisance for us. Here, eat this. It's full of additives, though. What was handed to me were cup noodles stored for emergencies. Seeing the box placed on the ground, I was convinced they were serious. No way! Wait, please! There was no kettle to boil water, no kitchen in the yard, so eating properly was impossible. But my desperate plea was in vain, as the door was closed mercilessly in front of me. I was stunned for a moment. But as time passed, I felt a surge of anger rising from the bottom of my stomach like magma. I can't take this anymore. What have I done to deserve this? Sure, it was wrong of me to laugh. But they didn't listen to a word I said. They never even tried to lend an ear. It had always been like that. There was no freedom for me here, everything they didn't want was eliminated. Talking to someone who has no intention of listening is pointless. If something happens to me, they'll be the ones in trouble. Maybe if I throw away the contents, they'll give me proper food. I was so desperate that I thought about throwing away all the cup noodles. Part of me thought it would be a waste, but the feeling of not wanting to live off cup noodles was stronger. So, I opened the box roughly and found something among the tightly packed cup noodles. Oh, this one's open. One of the lids was half open. A bad feeling came over me as I clenched my fist tightly. Could this be another one of their pranks? I hesitantly reached out and took the cup noodle. Curious, I fully opened the half-open lid, only to find a small black device and a note inside instead of dried noodles and ingredients. What is this? I opened the note. It simply said, "I'm truly sorry for all the hardship you've endured. The recorder inside is evidence. Take it to the police. The envelope contains money for you. Use it to live freely." Is this? The letter paper with elegant rose prints and neat handwriting. I had seen it only a few times, but there was no mistaking Madison's handwriting. Inside the envelope were 5 $100 bills, and in the box of cup noodles, similar envelopes with $500 each were tucked in through small gaps. Additionally, there were documents detailing Kendrick and Kevin's domestic behavior. Before I knew it, I was running to the nearest police station, as if pushed from behind. Please help me! Breathing heavily and without shoes, the police officer responded immediately to my appearance. As he read the report and listened to my story, his expression gradually darkened. I was currently thrown into the yard, unable to enter the house or return to my family. Considering all this, he seemed to determine it was an urgent matter. With a serious look, he reassured me by patting my shoulder. "This is terrible. Tracy, you've done well. Can you take me to your house?" Yes. A turning point had finally come in my despairing days. Maybe the days of being oppressed by the Thomas family would change. As I returned home with a faint hope, a shout suddenly echoed from the entrance. "What the hell are you doing?" It was Kendrick's furious voice. Then, a sharp sound echoed, like something being struck hard, and we hurriedly opened the front door. "What's going on?" There stood Kendrick, breathing heavily, and Madison, crouching on the floor, clutching her red, swollen cheek. Kendrick was so furious that he didn't even notice the police officer had arrived. It was clear at a glance what had happened. "Madison!" I screamed as I rushed to her. Madison finally lifted her face. And as soon as her vacant eyes caught sight of me and the police officer, she burst out laughing uncontrollably. "Heh, ha ha ha. What's wrong, Madison?" "You. What are you laughing about? Kevin is gone, and now you want a divorce. Are you kidding me?" Between the two of them, there was a crumpled divorce application lying on the floor. Could Madison have handed it to him? Madison had always been obedient to Kendrick, never contradicting him. Seeing her laughing like she had lost her mind, Kendrick raised his hand high. "Stop it." But a quick-moving police officer restrained him, stopping his movement. It was only then that Kendrick seemed to realize the police officer was there. His face went pale, and Madison started laughing in a high-pitched voice again. "Ha ha ha. Seriously, what's wrong, Madison?" Madison's increasingly abnormal behavior left us all frozen, unable to move. I fearfully called out to her. Madison, her cheeks flushed with excitement, spoke with a smile still on her face. "Finally, it's over, Kendrick." "What?" Kendrick, his voice trembling with fear, could barely get the word out. Without giving Kendrick time to process his confusion, Madison continued. "You can't move at all right now, can you? You can't hit me even if you want to, can you? Do you know why? Because that police officer over there has more power than you do. Tracy and I have felt the same way all this time." "What?" "I've been waiting for this day to come." I was too shocked to form coherent words. What Madison had just said was undoubtedly meant for me. Madison suddenly stopped laughing and wiped the expression from her face. "You've always been like this. If something bothers you, you immediately resort to violence. You can't stand it if people don't do exactly what you want. Dialogue is out of the question. You expect those weaker than you to comply, and you take it for granted that others support you. Ever since Kevin was born, you've been violent towards me. You knew I couldn't escape, a housewife estranged from her parents. So I've been planning this day for a long time." Madison's voice was as cold as ice as she glared at Kendrick, explaining her long-laid plans. "At first, I didn't have enough evidence, and there was Kevin to consider. I planned to act when Kevin was independent and we had enough money saved. I never imagined Kevin would get married to Tracy so quickly and start acting just like you. Kevin was more cowardly but cunning, so I pretended to be a crazy conspiracy theorist, feeding you both unhealthy food." Hearing that, I was stunned. Indeed, as a housewife tasked with taking care of my in-laws, I had been preparing meals for the three of us. These meals were always in line with Madison's preferences, avoiding additives and foreign ingredients, which she disliked. They were far from what I would consider healthy meals. Despite this, Madison, who disliked me, always said, "I don't want to eat the same food as you," and had me prepare separate meals for her. So, I cooked and ate what I wanted. If what she said was true, was all of that just an act? If so, had Madison been excluding me from her plans all along? It was a long battle, but in the end, Kevin fell right into my plan. I suppose the daily stress and poor diet finally took their toll on him. Madison's voice softened for a moment as she thought of Kevin. But the next instant, she burst into a maniacal laugh. "But now, Kevin's inheritance can go to Tracy. You and I are off to hell together. Ha ha ha." Kendrick was speechless. He just stared at the laughing Madison with wide eyes. "You always acted like a king in this house. Do you realize how powerless you truly are?" It wasn't just me who suffered. She endured far longer than I did, holding on, waiting for this day to come. She fought through a distorted life, never giving up. Let's go. You both need to come to the station. We'll discuss this further there. The police officer spoke quietly. Kendrick no longer had the strength to shout in anger. It was as if all the energy that had driven him evaporated. As he was led away by the police, he murmured in a barely audible voice, "I'm sorry." But Madison responded with a tearful, bitter laugh. "What's the point of apologizing now?" And so, we walked silently to the police station. Kendrick admitted to everything recorded on the voice recorder and detailed in the accusation report about the Thomas family's internal affairs. As a result, Kevin's sudden health decline was deemed a planned act, indicating foul play. Naturally, Madison was identified as the perpetrator. After everything was laid out, Madison seemed to shrink, all her malice and triumphant laughter fading away. "Tracy, I'm truly sorry for dragging you into my scheme. Please, don't apologize. You suffered just as much, Madison." "No, it doesn't change the fact that I hurt you repeatedly." I remembered the neat handwriting on the note that came with the instant noodles. Now, I could see it as a reflection of her true nature, thoughtful and meticulous. "It must have been so painful to see the food you carefully prepared thrown away for no reason." "No." I shook my head. It was true that it hurt back then, and I had many nights of tears, but now it felt like a minor thing. It wasn't about forgiveness anymore. We both deserved to be freed from this burden. It's okay now. It's all over. 10 years have passed since then. Today is Madison's birthday. Since that time, I gathered my courage and started working. I was fortunate enough to find a warm and supportive workplace, allowing me to lead an independent life. And today, I put into action my secret plan to save up my salary and take Madison on a little trip. Look, Madison. The roses are beautiful. Madison, who had been tense and focused on executing this plan for a long time, fell ill right after the events at the Thomas household were resolved. Pushing her wheelchair, which had become essential for her mobility, I walked under an arch where the roses bloomed magnificently. Yes, they are very beautiful. She seemed to be enjoying this modest trip. After the incident with the Thomas family, I decided to support her. By now, she is a precious member of my family. We care for each other, share words, and sometimes enjoy moments like this together. Madison, I've also prepared a special birthday cake. Let's eat it together when we get back to the hotel. Thank you. I'm looking forward to it. We chatted as we leisurely walked under the roses, explored nearby souvenir shops, and browsed stores aimed at tourists. She seemed to be enjoying herself, so I would say this little trip was a big success. We have gained freedom and follow our hearts, doing what we want to do. As I started humming "Happy Birthday to You," I thought about how wonderful it would be if days like this could continue forever. A wife must obey her husband. Do you understand? Don't you dare embarrass me. My husband Patrick pressured me, just for inviting my sister Nicole over to our house. Does he really care that much about appearances? To me, she's my only precious family member left. After losing my parents, she's the only one I can trust, yet I can't seem to relax. It must be because Patrick is there. However, the situation takes a sudden turn. "Hey Patrick, why is there, behind you?" Nicole asks upon seeing Patrick. Hearing that, Patrick visibly panics. Seeing the situation unfold, I become certain I wasn't wrong. My name is Amanda. I'm a 29-year-old housewife. I met Patrick at the company I worked at a few years ago. Back then, He was in the same department as me and was someone everyone admired. And I too was one of those people who admired Patrick. So when he confessed his feelings to me, I was surprised. There was Patrick, who received envious looks from our coworkers, and then there was me, just a plain employee. Even so, Patrick had his eyes on me. That made me so happy. I accepted Patrick's confession. We started dating after that, and then got married. I thought if we were considering having children in the future, it would be better to do things sooner rather than later. At Patrick's request, I quit the company I had been working at. I thought it would be too difficult to handle housework while also working. In the future, I'd likely be raising children, and it was clear that it would be hard to secure time for that. Patrick didn't have a low income, so I thought we'd somehow manage. But we were unable to conceive a child as easily as we had hoped. We wanted to have children but weren't seeing results. Perhaps at his wit's end, Patrick told me to go to a fertility clinic. But isn't this the kind of thing couples go to together? I'd feel uneasy going alone, and I want you to come with me, Patrick. These days, it's a given that infertility isn't just caused by women. Above all, I thought getting to the root of the problem was the fastest path to a solution. I'll adjust my schedule, I added, inviting him to go to the fertility clinic with me. But Patrick made a disgusted face at my words. That's no place for a man to go. Can't you just go alone, get the necessary tests done, and be done with it? Don't bother me with this. How can you say something so horrible? It's normal for couples to tackle fertility treatments together. There might be issues with you too, Patrick. When I said that, Patrick, who had been quiet until then, "What did you say?" raised his voice. Startled by his sudden change in demeanor, I sank to the floor. Patrick, with a face full of anger, looked down on me like that. Are you trying to say I'm defective? Don't get cheeky with me, you're my wife. Listen up. It's your fault we can't have a child. You're the one to blame. We can't conceive because you're a good-for-nothing wife. His words were so cruel, I couldn't even shed tears. Consumed solely by fear, I simply repeated I'm sorry over and over until Patrick's anger subsided somewhat. Then I fled to my room as if escaping. Ever since we got married, I became unable to voice my opinions to Patrick. Patrick held outdated views that women should respect men and that wives were their husbands' slaves. He tried to control me. By this point, I no longer had the energy to consider how absurd that was. If I expressed even the slightest disagreement with Patrick, he would yell at me, pressure me, and force me to abandon my own assertions. I never thought about getting a divorce, strangely enough. Looking back, Patrick had become such a terrifying presence to me that I couldn't go against him no matter what. I think I had this fixed idea that I couldn't betray him. If only I had divorced him and escaped from Patrick at that point, I wouldn't have met such a terrible end. Although I underwent infertility tests at the OB/GYN clinic, no abnormalities were found in me. I thought perhaps the issue was with Patrick, but no matter how much I tried to persuade him, he would only say, "There's no way the problem is with me. If there's nothing wrong with you, you'll get pregnant eventually." No matter how much I begged, he wouldn't go get tested. In the end, we never found out why we couldn't have children. My in-laws hadn't started pressuring us for grandchildren yet. But sometimes I'd hear stories about relatives having grandkids and could sense they were indirectly putting pressure on me. I'm not urging you or anything. But you can't always have children whenever you want. It gets harder if you wait until later to decide you want them after all. My mother-in-law Maria would say, making me feel awful. It's not that I don't want children or anything like that. On the contrary, I love children, and I was determined to raise my own child with care if I had one. but I can't do what I'm unable to do. So each time, I could only force an awkward smile and try to get through the moment. Amanda is quite the inadequate wife. I'm sure Patrick feels embarrassed because of her. My father-in-law Mark would say, and Patrick would nod in agreement. You got that right. At home, she's always pressuring me to help with chores or go to the doctor with her. It's embarrassing. Hearing Patrick's words, Maria and Mark would give pitying looks. It's true I asked him to help with housework, but that was when I was in poor health. Patrick happened to have a day off, so I just asked him to bring in the laundry that was hanging outside. But even then, Patrick got furious, yelling, "You're a housewife, but you're making me do chores?" After that, no matter how sick or miserable I felt, I resolved everything on my own somehow. The respectable Patrick had earned the absolute trust of Maria and Mark. So if Patrick said something, it was taken as the complete truth. Inevitably, I became the villain in Maria and Mark's eyes. Going to my in-laws' house made me feel unbearably self-conscious. Despite that, Patrick must have disliked being home alone with me, because he insisted on going to his parents' house every weekend without fail. Mom and Dad worry about me. I'm their precious son, so if I don't show my face regularly, of course they'll be concerned. With no room to refuse, I was more or less forced to accompany him to my in-laws. My own parents had passed away in a car accident a few years prior, leaving my sister Nicole as my only family. Still, Nicole was my one and only family member, so I wanted to see her. But while Patrick frequently wanted to see his own parents, he detested the idea of me meeting Nicole to an unusual degree. You're married now. I'm the only one you should be devoted to, along with my parents. Don't forget that. I could only nod at Patrick's words, hating myself more than anything for it. In the end, I couldn't meet Nicole. We were limited to exchanging messages and phone calls during the day while Patrick was out. Nicole sounded worried about me over the phone, her voice tinged with unease. Are you really okay? Should I come visit soon? I still haven't met Patrick after all. By this point, it was already our third year of marriage, but Nicole and Patrick had never met. Normally, I think the families would meet before the wedding, but Nicole was too busy with work to find the time back then. Nicole did attend our wedding ceremony, but it was such a big wedding with many of our bosses and friends invited that there wasn't much time for personal greetings. We had agreed to do family introductions when our schedules allowed. So while Nicole knew what Patrick looked like, she didn't know what kind of person he was. And the same was true from Patrick's perspective. Your sister must be a nobody. She doesn't even have parents anymore. I bet she'll end up living a lonely life, unable to ever get married. Patrick would sometimes say mockingly about Nicole. Each time he said such things, all I could do was bite my lip and look down. Of course, it infuriated me to hear my only precious family member spoken ill of. But having come to see Patrick as a terrifying existence, I lacked the courage to argue against his words. However, that situation was about to abruptly change. It started with Nicole's birthday approaching. Glancing at the calendar, I realized it was already coming up next month. Feeling time passing faster than expected, I let out an inadvertent sigh. What? Do you have some complaint? Patrick asked, looking displeased upon seeing me. Worried I had angered him, I explained the situation a bit awkwardly. I just realized Nicole's birthday is coming up soon. That's all it was, so don't let it bother you, I said with a forced smile. I was anxious about whether my smile looked natural, but seeing my expression, a nasty grin spread across Patrick's face. Ah, I see. Patrick nodded, his smile growing eerie. Come to think of it, I still haven't met Nicole. Bring her over next time. It's about time I greeted her properly, don't you think? His words made me. What? Blurt out. Up until now, Patrick had acted like he couldn't care less about Nicole. What was this about? Delight at the prospect of seeing Nicole for the first time in years and doubt towards Patrick's motives clashed in my mind. It must be hard for a useless wife like you to handle all the housework alone. She's single anyway, so just convince her to help out. It'll be great for me to have 2 slaves instead of 1. Patrick's next words filled me with despair. In the end, Patrick just wanted to gain another slave. It's true Nicole is single, but she has her own life to live. Hearing Patrick's callous plan made me question whether it was wise to invite Nicole over so simply. But the course had already been set, so I resolved to keep it to just 1 meeting and contacted Nicole. A wife must obey her husband. Understand? Don't you dare embarrass me. As the day of Nicole's visit to my home drew closer, Patrick kept repeating the same thing to me every single day. He was probably afraid that upon seeing Nicole, I would disregard his words and seek her help with my personal issues. However, I had no intention of bothering Nicole with such private matters, so Patrick's concerns were entirely unnecessary. Eventually, the day of Nicole's arrival came. As I was doing household chores and waiting, the doorbell rang. Nicole, it's been a while. When I opened the door, there stood Nicole. It was the first time I had seen her since the wedding, but I felt relieved to see that she looked as lively as ever. As I invited Nicole inside, Patrick emerged, looking more dressed up than usual. At first, he stood tall, trying to exude an air of authority, but the moment he laid eyes on Nicole, he froze in place. Is something wrong? No, it's nothing. The truth is, Nicole is an unbelievably beautiful woman. Her stunning looks had earned her the title of Miss University in beauty pageants multiple times. Back when we were in college together, I often received requests from male acquaintances who wanted me to introduce them to Nicole. It pains me to admit it, but I have a rather ordinary face. With makeup, my appearance is passable, but Nicole's beauty is on a completely different level. Patrick, seeing Nicole for the first time, was staring at her with flushed cheeks. Honestly, it made me feel disgusted. I stepped in between the two of them. Let me introduce you. This is my sister, Nicole. And this is Patrick. Thank you for coming today. Nicole smiled and expressed her gratitude, but Patrick's gaze remained fixed on her. However, Nicole was looking at Patrick with a puzzled expression. I thought she might have been put off by Patrick's stare, but her words made me realize that I had misunderstood. Hey, Patrick. Why are there babies behind you? Excuse me? At Nicole's question, Patrick looked utterly confused. For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what Nicole was saying either, but then I remembered her unique ability. Nicole has had a slightly unusual constitution since birth. Ever since she was little, she would point at empty spaces and have conversations with a smile, even though no one was there. Of course, our parents found this behavior strange and asked if someone was there. According to Nicole, our grandfather was standing in that spot. At the time, our grandfather had already passed away. It's what people would call having a sixth sense. It was a sensation I couldn't understand, but as we spent time together, I naturally came to believe that Nicole could see ghosts. Nicole never tried to hide the fact that she could see spirits. She would greet and laugh at seemingly empty spaces. Some people found it creepy, but Nicole didn't let it bother her and continued to live by her own style. Her being unmarried at this age might have something to do with her unique perspective. People who approached Nicole solely based on her looks usually got scared off by her behavior and distanced themselves. But Nicole never seemed to mind. Nicole, what exactly do you see? Curious about the babies Nicole mentioned, I asked her. She then proceeded to describe in detail what she saw behind Patrick. According to Nicole, it wasn't just one entity clinging to Patrick. Several baby-like figures with blurry outlines were clinging to Patrick's back. Some of them were even hugging Patrick's body. Amanda mentioned having trouble conceiving, but that's probably Patrick's fault. At Nicole's words. What? Patrick exclaimed. Imagining the scene just described, he turned pale, shedding his usual good guy facade, and glared at Nicole and me while sweating profusely. What the hell is this? Ghosts don't exist. Are you trying to scare me? That's in poor taste. Nicole had no intention of startling him or anything like that. She was simply conveying what she saw. Suddenly, Nicole smiled at Patrick. Or so I thought, but her gaze wasn't directed at Patrick, but rather at the babies that were presumably behind him. Nicole muttered, "Poor things." A single phrase. According to her, the babies all had agonized expressions on their faces. They were glaring at Patrick as if he were their enemy. What on earth did you do? These children seem to hold a grudge against you. If this continues, you might meet a terrible fate. Even now, they have the power to influence you. It wouldn't be surprising if something irreversible happened. Nicole's voice was serious, making it clear that she wasn't joking. That's how critical Patrick's situation was. How did it come to this? And why were babies clinging to Patrick in the first place? I couldn't even begin to imagine the reason and swallowed hard. Patrick, what did you do? How did things end up like this? If he had been living a normal life, this shouldn't have happened. Even Nicole said, "I've never seen anyone in this state before." Unless he had done something truly terrible, it's unlikely that he would be resented by so many babies. What on earth had Patrick done? At first, Patrick remained silent, but then he seemed to give in and started shouting. What the hell? I was just having a little fun, that's all. Why is this happening? Just having fun? What do you mean? Hearing Patrick's words, it seemed like he had some idea of what was going on. When I asked him, Patrick reluctantly spoke. Somehow, seeing the numerous babies and Patrick's attitude, I felt like I could guess the answer. Don't tell me, you were cheating? At my words, Patrick vehemently said, No, I wasn't. But his face was covered in sweat, and his expression was pale. I could tell that Patrick's words were a lie. Observing our exchange, Nicole, who had been silent until then, asked, Can I say something? She then shared what she had understood in her own way. These babies are probably Patrick's children. The ones who were meant to be born but couldn't. Those children are clinging to Patrick, wishing they had been born. Hearing her words, I realized that my earlier suspicions had been correct. Patrick had been cheating with multiple women. And it was likely that this continued even after he married me. Whenever a mistress got pregnant, he would have the child aborted, repeating this cycle over and over. As a result, the poor children who couldn't be born were clinging to their father, Patrick, with feelings of resentment. I can't believe it. Although I couldn't get pregnant, I still believed that children should be cherished. And yet, what Patrick and his mistresses had been doing was tantamount to disregarding those children. Putting aside the fact that I couldn't conceive even though I wanted to, I felt a surge of anger at what they had done. Of course, the fact that he had been cheating was unforgivable in itself. After all, it was a betrayal against me. However, I was now glad that I hadn't gotten pregnant. If I had, my child might have become one of the babies clinging to Patrick. The thought made my chest ache unbearably. Patrick was flustered under our contemptuous gazes. Then he started saying, "Don't say such stupid things. First of all, ghosts don't exist. You two must have conspired together. I don't know anything. I'm completely clueless." It seemed that Patrick had no intention of admitting his guilt. Of course, I could understand how difficult it was to believe in Nicole's ability. From my perspective, having spent many years with Nicole, I knew her power was real. But for Patrick, who was meeting her for the first time today, it was probably hard to believe. However, if that were the case, he wouldn't be this flustered. He should have been able to brush it off as a ridiculous lie. Patrick's very attitude was proof of what Nicole was saying. If he had nothing to hide, he could have remained composed. The fact that he couldn't do so meant that Patrick had something to conceal. Either way, since there are suspicions of your infidelity, I'm going to do what I need to do. Let's keep our distance for a while. I don't want to live with someone who is resented by numerous babies. Up until now, I had never felt the urge to defy Patrick. Because in my mind, Patrick was a terrifying existence, someone I shouldn't go against. However, I was different now. Certainly, Patrick was a frightening person. Maybe even more so than I had thought. But hearing Nicole's words, I couldn't help but feel that it was unforgivable. I couldn't continue this married life with someone like him any longer. If that was the case, I thought it would be better to cut ties with him right then and there. At my words, Patrick looked at me with a shocked expression. "Why? I thought you loved me. So why are you coming to this conclusion?" Surprisingly, Patrick seemed to have mistakenly believed that the reason I wouldn't seek a divorce was that I loved him. What kind of thought process was that? Day after day, I was pressured, given cold stares, and forced to associate with Maria and Mark against my will. And yet, my mind wasn't so messed up that I could still love him despite all that. The love I had felt for Patrick at the beginning of our marriage had only faded over the years. Now, while I still felt intimidated by his frightening presence, I no longer harbored any feelings of affection for him. "Don't say such foolish things. There's no way I could possibly love you. Not after being told so many horrible things. Let's get a divorce. I've reached my limit. I have no need to be married to someone like you." I clearly expressed my intentions. I didn't want to waste any more time on Patrick. It was best to quickly sever ties and distance myself from him. Ignoring Patrick's attempts to stop me, I returned to my room. Then, taking only the bare essentials, I immediately went back to the living room. Nicole, who had been quietly watching the exchange between Patrick and me, seemed to have realized what I wanted to do. But she didn't stop me. "I'm going to head out now. I'll mail you the divorce papers later, so don't forget to submit them." "Hey, wait a minute." Ignoring Patrick's attempts to stop me, I left the house with Nicole. Despite the suddenness of my decision, Nicole smiled at me. "For now, let's go to my place." Although Nicole's house was some distance away from the house I had been living in with Patrick, as a housewife, I didn't need to consider the distance to a workplace. So we settled on the arrangement that I would stay at Nicole's place for a while as I looked for a job and a new home. "You can stay here forever, you know," Nicole told me, but I knew it wasn't good to rely on her indefinitely. That being said, I had accumulated a lot of loneliness from the years I couldn't see Nicole. So even when I moved to a new place, I was considering finding a home near hers. As I was searching for a job, Nicole recommended the company she worked for. Apparently, they were short on office staff and were in a bind. I happened to have the qualifications that were useful for office work, so I decided to go in for an interview. I was evaluated as highly competent and was offered a position. One day, as I was relaxing at home after coming back from work, the doorbell rang. It was too early for Nicole to be coming home. For a moment, I found it odd, but I thought it must be a delivery and opened the door. Standing there was Patrick. "How did you know this place?" Patrick shouldn't have known where Nicole's house was. So how did he find out? I broke out in a cold sweat at the unexpected reunion with someone I thought I'd never see again. Ignoring my reaction, Patrick, who looked slightly thinner, spoke. "I saw you around here the other day. From there, I kept following you, and that's how I found out where this place was. Listen, Amanda, let's get back together. Divorce isn't good. Ever since then, something's been off. I keep hearing these auditory hallucinations. I won't forgive you. I won't forgive you." It seemed that Patrick had lost his mind. Or maybe the children clinging to Patrick were lashing out at him with their resentment. Without Nicole here, I couldn't know for sure, but I had spent a long time with her. It was only natural that I had become somewhat knowledgeable about these things. Disregarding my presence, Patrick continued speaking. "Even inside the house, things started getting weird. The other day, I found nails in the bathroom. They weren't mine, they were much smaller. The size of a baby's nails." Patrick's demeanor as he spoke was one of desperation. If left like this, surely, just as Nicole had said, things would become irreversible. Maybe it was already too late. However, I didn't feel the slightest urge to lend a helping hand to the pitiful man in front of me. "Please, come back home. Or call Nicole right now. I was wrong, I won't betray you again. So please, help me." He must have been really cornered. If it were the Patrick from a short while ago, his pride would have gotten in the way, and he wouldn't have apologized. Realizing just how desperate he was, the corners of my mouth involuntarily turned up. Over and over, Patrick pleaded, begging me. For my part, this was Nicole's house, and it would be troublesome if the neighbors saw us. With that in mind, I decided to engage in a brief conversation with him. But not to lend him a helping hand. "Isn't that your own responsibility? Isn't it your fault for doing things that made you hated? If you had acted properly as an adult, this wouldn't have happened. It's all because of you and your mistresses. Don't say such cold things." Patrick no longer tried to deny his infidelity. He must have been that cornered. But even if he clung to me, I couldn't muster the spirit to help him anymore. "I'm sorry, but give up. We're not going to help you," I firmly told Patrick. But Patrick shook his head at my words, refusing to accept them. And he clung to my feet. "Don't say such cold things. I'm really in trouble here. At this rate, I might really meet a terrible fate. I'll take any method. Please, help me. I can't do anything without you, Amanda." The absurdity of his claim made me feel dizzy. I felt the label of Patrick being a terrifying existence that I had held until now peel away all at once. The man in front of me was just pitiful. Even so, the sins he had committed were real, so I had no obligation to help him. "It's your own responsibility. This is happening because you didn't act properly. Why didn't you understand that you needed to take responsible actions as an adult? I went through hell being married to you. I should have divorced you much earlier." At my words, Patrick was dumbfounded. The look on his face was so comical that I couldn't help but laugh. And with a smile, I said, "Please leave. If you don't leave right now, I'm calling the police." "The police?" It seemed he didn't want the police to be notified, because at my words, Patrick leaped up in a panic and fled. Later, when Nicole came home, I explained the situation to her. Never expecting such a turn of events, Nicole said with a troubled expression, "The living are far scarier than the dead." As expected, Patrick was reluctant to divorce. Feeling that we were at an impasse, I decided to hire a lawyer. When I told Patrick that if he didn't agree to the divorce, we would go to court. He must have really disliked that prospect because he reluctantly accepted the divorce. It's a ridiculous story, but even in that situation, Patrick didn't stop seeing his mistresses. Perhaps, in his desperate circumstances, that was the only thing he could enjoy. I had hired a private investigator to keep tabs on Patrick's movements, just in case. But I thought it would be difficult to gather evidence after his infidelity had been exposed. So when I received a large number of photographs during the investigation report, I was surprised. In the end, using that evidence, I demanded a settlement for the infidelity from Patrick and several of his mistresses. Most of the mistresses apparently took that opportunity to distance themselves from Patrick. Now completely alone, Patrick is said to be living in fear, cowering at the thought of when things might become irreversible for him. Eventually, he couldn't even do his job properly and was essentially fired. It seems that Mark and Maria didn't have the energy to care for Patrick, who had gone off the deep end. Even though they had called him their precious son before, they didn't feel inclined to take care of him. With no family to turn to, in order to repay the debt he had taken on to pay the settlement, he is somehow managing to live while working part-time jobs. As for me, I was working hard at the company where Nicole was employed. Just the other day, I was recognized for my outstanding performance and received a promotion. I had found a nice place, but because of what had happened with Patrick, I initially planned to move in alone. However, I decided to live together with Nicole. In the midst of not knowing what might happen, I thought it would be better for us to be together rather than me being alone. Our 3-year marriage was, quite frankly, like hell. But I feel like this experience has deepened my bond with Nicole. Happy birthday, Amanda! Even though I had already turned 30, Nicole still celebrated my birthday with those words. I was so overjoyed that I couldn't help but smile. I vowed to cherish Nicole, my only family, from here on out. That's right, I renewed my determination. My name is Luna. I was a 28-year-old who worked in a flower shop located in an office building, creating flower arrangements. My husband, Oliver, was 32 years older than me, and worked as a hairstylist in the same building on the second floor. He was not exactly a celebrity stylist, but he was quite popular. We were celebrating our 3rd year of marriage that year. Apart from the fact that we had been unable to have children, I thought we were doing well as a happy couple. But it seemed I was the only one who thought that way. How did we first meet? Oliver used to frequently buy flowers for his salon from the flower shop on the 1st floor. Initially wary of Oliver, who was skilled in conversation due to his job, I gradually found it natural to have him by my side. How long was it after we started dating? Oliver invited me to dinner at his parents' house, saying he wanted to introduce me to his family. There, Oliver's brother and his fiancée were also present. I had heard about Oliver's struggles being compared to his excellent younger brother, but his brother was unpretentious and amiable, easy to talk to. Handsome, good-natured, and dependable, his brother had it all. Can't blame the parents for comparing, really. His fiancée, too, was beautiful and seemed quite talented. A stunningly attractive couple. Sitting opposite them, I couldn't help but wonder if I would be compared to his brother's bride-to-be if I married Oliver. During the lively conversation over dinner, "Have you guys decided on a date for the wedding ceremony?" Oliver asked his brother. Then, "We're about to decide. We'd love some suggestions for good venues," the brother and his fiancée replied. Oliver's brother, a promising banker, and his fiancée, working at a securities firm, were both solid professionals. Thinking they would prefer something luxurious, considering they'd invite bosses and work colleagues, I suggested some famous venues where my corporate friends had their weddings. The fiancée searched the venues on her mobile phone, happily engrossed in a page showing a venue with a garden chapel. Then Oliver chimed in. "Hey, why don't we do the wedding ceremony together? How about a restaurant wedding?" And so he had proposed with a casual tone. It was something I had hoped would happen eventually, but I was shocked by his sudden suggestion, especially since he hadn't yet formally met my parents. Then, from somewhere, I heard a distinct sking noise. I couldn't believe it, but it seemed like the sound came from my BIL's fiancée. She was making an incredibly dissatisfied face and muttering under her breath. BIL's girlfriend might be okay with such a ceremony, but I. Then Lucas, Oliver's brother, exclaimed, "Bro, that's a great idea! These kinds of stylish ceremonies are becoming more popular." He seemed genuinely excited about Oliver's suggestion. Being more displeased, the fiancé glared at me more, as if to stop Oliver from saying whatever he wanted. But she was glaring at the wrong person. If she had a problem, I wished she would speak up to the enthusiastic brothers instead. Subsequently, driven by the brothers' excitement, we ended up planning a restaurant wedding, and everything progressed quickly. In a flurry, we managed to greet my parents, and the four of us dined out to choose a venue. As days passed, the once disgruntled fiancé warmed up to Oliver, who was now BIL, and they got along so well that one would think they were the couple getting married. However, her attitude towards me remained unchanged. And so, 6 months later, the two couples held their restaurant weddings. After the marriage, I switched from full-time to part-time at work, focusing more on household chores. I left for work after sending Oliver off, returned home earlier to prepare dinner, and waited for Oliver's return. This became my routine. Sometimes, my BIL and his wife, both working full-time, relied on our dinner unexpectedly. It seemed cooking was too much of a hassle for them. Camila, my CL, came with just a token gift, evidently expecting me to cook, sparing herself the effort. At the dinner table, Camila oddly sat next to Oliver instead of her husband, treating me more like a convenient housekeeper. Honestly, their visits were far from welcome. Moreover, she indirectly criticized me, saying I looked plain or that my only talent was messing with flowers. I couldn't stand being demeaned in front of Oliver, but I hated confrontations, so I pretended not to mind Camila's words. Instead, after they left, "Why does she look down on people so much? It's terrible to imply someone's worthless if they don't work at an office." I vented to Oliver. "She's a competent and successful woman. Maybe you're just hearing it that way, Luna. It sounds like you're envious. You shouldn't say things like that." But his response was always defensive of Camila. Oliver, proud of his brother's achievements, seemed unwilling to hear anything negative about his brother's wife. It felt like he was implying I was the problem, listing all of Camila's virtues instead. Recently, my daily life had changed a bit due to Lucas's sudden solo assignment. Camila, too, seems somewhat reluctant to come uninvited to our dinners alone. With fewer visits from her, I was free from her snide comments and had been able to spend my days more peacefully. But now, a different worry had surfaced. For some reason, Oliver had been coming home late at night, day after day, leaving me to have dinner and go to bed alone. It was really worrying that he had been returning home after midnight so frequently. I hoped he didn't fall ill. One morning, as Oliver hurriedly got ready for work. "You've been coming home late recently. Are you okay? I'm worried you might wear yourself out." I asked him. Oliver didn't even look at me. No need to worry. It's just a contest. I'm busy preparing for a hair contest." He stammered. I haven't heard anything about a hair contest. Usually, he'd make a big deal about entering a hair contest weeks in advance, but this time, nothing. Isn't that strange? Sensing his haste, I asked, "When is this contest? You didn't mention it before. Did you decide to enter suddenly?" Without turning face to me, he replied, "Yeah, that's right. I overlooked the invitation. I've been busy arranging for a cut model and stuff." He didn't even look at me. Come to think of it, when a contest was near, a really cute cut model used to come to the salon after hours. Is she coming this time too? Is it the same cut model you usually have? I asked nonchalantly. Oliver exaggeratedly replied. Yeah, that's right. I've been keeping her late. Really, I feel so bad about it. His manner of speaking seemed exaggerated. What is this? This feels so forced. Doesn't his speech sound unnatural? Despite my feelings. Is that really okay? It's dangerous to keep a girl late every day, even if you're short on time. When I looked at Oliver, he seemed determined to avoid eye contact. Glancing at his watch, he said, Ah. Look at the time. I'm going to be late. Ignoring my words, he hurried out the door. Did he just run away? That reaction was so unnatural. Am I overthinking this? Could it be something with the cut model, an affair? No, that can't be it. The more I thought about it, the worse my thoughts got. After all, such things are unthinkable, aren't they? It's just my bad habit of overthinking. I need to stop that. It's just the late nights because of the hair contest preparations, that's all. Carrying these troubled thoughts, I got ready and headed to work. When I arrived at the shop, Mason, the manager of the salon where Oliver worked, was there picking out flowers for the salon. It was usually Oliver who picked the flowers, so it was unusual to see Mason here. Mason said he leaves the flower selection to Oliver because he doesn't know much about them. Could it be that Oliver asked Mason to pick the flowers to avoid further questions about this morning's conversation? I decided to probe a little. Oliver is participating in a hair contest with you, right? Good luck with that, I said to Mason. But Mason looked confused. Which hair contest? We don't have any such plans, he asked. I also asked about the cut model, but he said they hadn't requested any recently. Apparently, the model was Mason's cousin, who was currently studying abroad. As for the late nights, Mason said that Oliver had been leaving the salon at the regular closing time, so there was no way he had to come home after midnight. It seemed like everything Oliver told me was a lie. So, what had Oliver been doing every night, and with whom? While my suspicion about the cut model was cleared, I still felt uneasy. Stunned and trying to grasp the situation. Should I subtly ask him about it? Mason offered. I thought about accepting Mason's offer, but would Oliver give him a straight answer? I felt like Oliver, being so good at talking, would give vague responses. It seemed more likely that something was going on. I didn't want to give Oliver any chance to concoct an excuse. I had to keep it a secret that I was aware of his lies and probing into the matter. I told Mason that I would handle it myself for now, and asked him to keep our conversation secret, saying I would seek his advice if needed. That night, I decided to wait for Oliver and ask him as if I was oblivious to everything. I doubted he would tell me the truth anyway. Around midnight, Oliver finally came home. While claiming to have been working late, he looked slightly startled when he saw me waiting up. I'm home. I'm exhausted. Finally got the new haircut done, he said, unaware that I knew everything. I wondered what kind of amazing haircut he completed. I asked Oliver, who was trying to mask his nervousness. You must be worn out. Hey, do you mind if I ask something? As I spoke quietly. What's up? What do you want to know? His voice trembled. Are you really working? Are you really preparing for a hair contest? Oliver replied. Well, of course I am. What else would it be? His unease was apparent. He seemed intent on sticking to his lies. In that case. Oh? What about cheating? Yes or no? I asked directly, and his face changed completely. What? Of course I'm not. Oliver began to get defensive. Even the usually eloquent Oliver had no room for jokes. Despite his panic, he tried to weave an escape with desperate excuses. You know, Mason told me. The hair contest is a lie, right? Wouldn't it be better to just come clean? What are you really doing? I cornered him with no escape. Apparently, he had no excuses left and... trembling with clenched fists. Fine. I'll say it. It's an affair. I've fallen in love with someone else. He blurted out. His confession came off as resigned and frustrated. He even started to get angry, as if it was some sort of injustice. I tried to get him to confess who the other person was, but he refused to say, probably because it was someone he shouldn't be involved with. No matter how much I pressed, my anger only grew. Then, I'll hire a detective or whatever it takes to find out, just be ready. It's Camila. Hearing my words, he went pale and confessed in a defeated tone. Camila? Isn't she Lucas's wife? I was shocked, and he retorted. Yes, Camila. She's pregnant with my child. You haven't had a child with me, but you did with someone else, and that someone is your brother's wife? That's despicable. As I hurled accusations at Oliver, he retorted with unreasonable words. It's your fault for being infertile. Anyway, I'm going to take responsibility and divorce you. His words were infuriatingly unfair. That explained why he always sided with his Sael over me. Are you kidding? Do you even realize what you're saying? Does Lucas know? To have been treated this way by him, I couldn't help but be angry. It doesn't matter. Camila and I won't be separated. She's going to divorce Lucas and be with me. No one can stop us. Oliver declared defiantly. If you don't like it, then let's get a divorce right now. Disgusted by his words, I retorted. Don't like it? That's an understatement. I'll gladly divorce you. I decided then and there to cut ties with this hopeless man. The next day, I told everything to my parents, my in-laws, and Lucas, who was at his assignment location. Shocked and furious, they couldn't believe Oliver and Camila had an affair and were expecting a child. Despite their family's reactions, both were unapologetic and brazen. All this is Asael's fault, right? If she's upset about the affair or didn't notice it, it's her own fault. If Lucas wants to blame someone, he should blame Asael. Camila even had the audacity to put the blame on me. Their lack of remorse disgusted everyone. Lucas decided to divorce Camila, and both Oliver and Camila were disowned by our parents and Lucas. Later, when I reported the situation to Mason, the concerned salon manager. He was one of our recommended hairstylists. This could affect our salon's reputation. I need to think about what to do with Oliver, he said while crossing his arms. 3 months later, after Camila's remarriage prohibition period ended, she and Oliver got married. Yet, for some reason, I was getting calls from Oliver on my mobile phone. I was at work, and as far as I was concerned, he was a person from my past. I had nothing to say to him, yet he kept calling persistently if I ignored him. Oliver, still somehow keeping his job under Mason's management and working in the beauty salon on the second floor, was someone I don't want showing up at the flower shop. Reluctantly, I answered the call. Hey, can you help me out here? His voice was weak and pitiful. A far cry from his earlier bravado. Why should I? I have no obligation to help you. Can you stop bothering me during work? As I was about to hang up. Don't be so cold. Can I come over to talk? Oliver appeared to really want to talk. Not wanting him to actually come, I decided to listen. It turned out he was in quite a laughable predicament. According to Oliver, on the day they registered their marriage, Camila received a demand for alimony in a divorce lawsuit via a formal notice. What's this about? He questioned, and it turned out Camila had been having an affair with her boss, and his wife found out, demanding $50,000 in alimony. Moreover, she was pregnant, and it was unclear whether the child was Oliver's or her boss's. He might end up raising a child that isn't his. I have no confidence in raising a child that might not be mine. Tell me how to get a divorce. His SOS to me was the last thing I needed. Just say what you told me, was all the advice I gave. That's it. That was the last call I ever received from Oliver. Nevertheless, both my former sister-in-law and ex-husband were such despicable people. They were both broke after paying us alimony in the divorce suits. Oliver was likely to be fired by Mason now, and with Camila's affair scandal at work, she would probably be fired too, burdened with a hefty debt of $50,000 for alimony. What would they do now? Face bankruptcy? It seemed like a miserable life awaits them, socially and personally obliterated. As for me, I remarried a man who supplies flowers to my shop and am expecting a long-awaited child. I live happily, surrounded by beautiful flowers, a kind and honest husband, and looking forward to holding my lovely child. Despite being called plain, living true to myself is best. I've learned my lesson to stay away from smooth talkers and those who look down on others. She's not family, that's why he sent her home. How could she say such a thing about my mother? That one's just a housekeeper. This is a family trip, right? Those without blood ties are strangers. She's probably tending to the fields I told her to buy now. My grandfather said too, laughing. My father and I were shocked. Cut the crap. What would happen after his shouting? My name is Hannah, and I'm 17 years old now. I live in the rural area, which is still common to have extended families living together. My friends' homes are the same, and of course, so is ours. My paternal grandparents, my parents, and I live together. Living together is one thing, but what comes with it is the constant harassment. Hey, Olivia, isn't the seasoning in today's meal a bit strong? Well, it might be just right for our son and grandchild, but it's a bit much for us old folks. Sorry about that. I thought I was being careful. Careful, huh? And it's still this salty? Are you trying to shorten our lives by feeding us all this salt? Right, it's common for wives to cold-heartedly bully us frail elderly. You know, the wife in the house next door also. Come on, it started again. My grandparents always find some way to make snide remarks to my mother, Olivia. It's always about something so unreasonable. Like today's dinner, it's not even that salty. Moreover, she's prepared separate portions for us and for the grandparents, seasoning them differently. I tried tasting it, and indeed, the elderly portion is bland. To me, the seasoning is far from enough. How can this be considered high in salt? Maybe it's better not to season it at all. Although my mother, who is used to it, just nodded along, I couldn't stand it and fought back. Grandpa, give it a rest. This is super lightly seasoned already. If you still think it's bland, why don't you taste your own sweat? A kid should be quiet. If Grandpa says it's too strong, then it's too strong. That's right. Hannah, you're just a kid, you wouldn't understand. For us elderly, it's quite strong. Your mother could make it lighter. That's why she's a bad wife. Hannah, make sure you don't turn out like her. Well, I love my mother's cooking. Unlike some tasteless old geezers. I'm in my rebellious phase, so there's no way I'm just going to take it and say okay. Catching a glimpse of my mother, she just hung her head, looking troubled, without retorting. She must have felt my gaze because she looked at me and gave me a weary smile. That tired smile pained my heart. It's not just about the cooking. Day in and day out, my grandparents always have something terrible to say to her. Like how she does the laundry wrong, or how her cleaning is not up to snuff. They even insist that leftovers are good enough for my mother's lunch, and that she should shower last. The list goes on. What era do they think this is? It's like something out of old drama series, these torments. The coldness my grandparents show my mother has another reason. It's because my parents keep their distance from my grandparents' peculiar faith. Instead of Christ, my grandparents worship Satan daily. They seem to blame my mother for my father, their son, being utterly indifferent to their faith. Their frequent saying is, "That one, Satan will drop into hell." My busy father is often away, and I come home late from the sports lessons. During that time, my housewife mother is left alone with my grandparents. Dad, Grandpa and Grandma were saying awful things to Mom again. They even suggested she's plotting something, saying the seasoning was strong when it was clearly bland. I reported to my father, who came home late at night. Honestly, I hate to bother my already tired father with such stories. But as his daughter, I just can't stay silent, can I? Man, happened again? Those two really are something. They don't realize that thanks to Olivia managing the house, they can enjoy their carefree retirement. It's all thanks to you too. I'm always grateful. Dear, it makes me happy to hear you say that. Hannah, you're such a good girl. No, I'm currently in my rebellious phase. It's just that my rebellion is aimed at my grandparents, so I'm less harsh on my parents. That's how much I dislike, or rather, detest my grandparents. Don't worry about it, Hannah. I'll talk to them. Just keep being on your mom's side, okay? My father said, patting my head, half irritated at being treated like a child, but also half pleased. Teenage emotions are complicated. One Sunday, I woke up late and lazily got out of bed, only to find my father arguing with grandmother. Enough already, Mom! My father's shouting voice snapped me to full alertness. Peeking into the living room, I saw my grandmother sitting on the sofa, looking grumpy. My father stood in front of her, and his face beat red with anger. Making her work in the fields on such a cold day, what are you thinking? He shouted. He is a regular office worker, but my grandparents are farmers, true to their rural roots. Though the size of their fields has greatly reduced due to old age. Field work? Is Grandpa doing it? Looking outside, I saw nothing but a white snowy landscape. The fields must be covered in snow. Is there something they're concerned about? When I was just thinking how dangerous it is for the elderly to work in the fields in such cold weather. Oh, I'm starving. What's all this ruckus about? Where's Olivia? Isn't lunch ready yet? My grandfather came in, scratching his belly. Okay, he is here. Wait, that means... Wait, don't tell me Mom's. My mother does indeed help out with my grandparents' farm work occasionally. But it's only during the harvest or busy times, generally, she doesn't. That's what I thought, but... That's exactly it. I asked Mom where Oliver went, and she wouldn't say, so when I pressed her, what's the need to do anything in such snow? Then she really went out. Oh my goodness. Well, managing the fields during winter is crucial. I know that. I'm asking if it's necessary in the snow. Snow repeatedly freezes and melts, messing up the soil. If you don't remove the snow, it'll be trouble in spring. Lies! I remember hearing that when snow covers the ground, it's best to leave it be. You deal with snow before it falls or after the ground thaws. Huh, is that so? Well, it's not the time to be impressed. Anyway, Dad, we need to get Mom quickly. Right, that was the point. Mom, let's talk later, okay? It's unbelievable that my mother has been working alone in such snow. Besides, it's starting to snow again. My father and I hurriedly put on our coats, boots, and dashed out of the house. She was there in the field. Exhaling white breath, her face red, she was shoveling snow. My father rushed over to her, and she gave a feeble smile. That smile again pained my heart. Why didn't I notice? While I was leisurely sleeping till noon, how many hours had she been shoveling snow? Being busy with work he brought home, my father hadn't noticed either and kept apologizing to the exhausted her. Sorry, Mom. Really sorry. That day, my grandmother got scolded by my angry father. You will be the one to fall into hell. After that, my grandparents were unusually quiet for a while. Seasons turned, and summer was approaching. The new term would start, and I would finally be in 12th grade. How about going on a trip? My father suggested. We have not traveled for a long time. After all, it's unlikely to go on family trips after high school graduation. Understanding the lonely feelings of a father, I pretended it was a hassle, but inside, I was excited. After all, parents pay for everything on family trips. There will be plenty of activities to do. Oh, that sounds nice. How about a beach? My rising spirits dropped at my grandmother's words. Wait, are you coming too? I regretted saying it immediately. Stepped on a landmine. What a terrible grandchild. Planning to leave us out. A kid like that, Satan will. She started, and eventually, Olivia. It's because of your poor upbringing that Hannah has grown into such an unthoughtful child. What a useless, no good mother. She began taking it out on my mother. Hey! I might have said something wrong, but it's not fair to blame Mom for that. Oh, how sad for a grandma to have such a cold grandchild. It's all because Oliver didn't discipline properly. Woe is me. Seriously? Woe is me, she actually said that. Astonished, I decided to give some payback by saying out loud, "Stop joking!" However, she continued to fake cry, while my grandfather nodded in agreement. Seeing the chaotic situation, my father sighed and tried to settle things. All right. How about we go together? Instantly, my grandmother's face lit up with a smile. Despite the troublesome situation, I was also looking forward to the trip. The day arrived. Living in the countryside, the airport was far. After hours' drive, we still had plenty of time before the scheduled flight. It's been a while since I visited the airport, so I wandered off from my family. When I thought it was about time and returned, I saw my grandparents sitting on the waiting chairs. Looking around for my parents, my father came back, munching on something. Looks tasty, Dad. Yeah, this is really good. You were eating something in the car, right? But I was also hungry, so I asked for one. Olivia, you want it? Oh, where's she? With a snack in hand, my father looked around. Hannah, do you know where Mom is? Weren't you with her, Dad? No, she said she'd stay and watch the luggage. We said we'd go for a walk. Hey Grandpa, do you know where Mom is? His response was unclear. Grandma, was Mom here when you came back? Yes, she was. So she was here. Maybe she's in the restroom? But no matter how long we waited, she didn't return. I checked the restroom, but she wasn't there. Looking around, there was no sign of her. Finding it strange, my father said with looking troubled, "It's almost time for departure. Where could Olivia be?" Is it time for boarding already? Then let's head over. Although my grandmother must have heard the conversation, she stood up without concern. Mom, we need to look for Olivia. She's not here, you know. What? Confused, my father tilted his head. I also looked at her. With a malicious smile, she said, "That one's not family. That's why I sent her home." What the hell? My father was shocked, and then my grandfather said with a laugh, "She's just a housekeeper. This is a family trip, right? A wife without blood ties is a stranger. She's probably doing the fieldwork I ordered by now." What freaking are you saying? We were just stunned, whereas they were laughing, unconcerned. Not family. What's that about? Mom's not family, then what is she? What's that? Cut the crap. Olivia is my precious wife. Wife or not, a stranger is a stranger. She's the bad stranger who ensnared our dear son. Right, I never liked her from the start. That's why I disciplined her. A stranger, not working, just squatting in our house, she should at least do some farm work. Let's say, what was it? Right, a neat. Just like a neat. They were chuckling with a vulgar laugh. I was so furious, and my vision turned red. I was about to say something when my father, quicker than me, stood in front of my grandparents and shouted, "Don't mess with me." Yikes! My father's voice echoed throughout the space. In the busy and crowded place, his voice resonated surprisingly far. Without caring about other passengers who stopped in their tracks, wondering what was going on, he continued to yell, "Always just harassing Olivia with your petty torments. You think I don't know anything? I know it all. Yes, I always tattle. And just when I thought you reflected on that snow incident, you pull this childish stunt. What's so fun about this? Ryan, we were just trying to educate that woman for your sake. What education could you vile people possibly give? It should be you who needs to be educated." Ryan, how dare you speak to your parents like that? Dad, you said Olivia was a stranger, right? She is my precious wife. My beloved wife. The most important family to me. You say that my family member, Olivia, is not your family, that she's a stranger. Then I'm a stranger too. You two and I are strangers. Ryan, what are you saying? What am I saying? That's my line. Do you even realize what you're saying, what you're doing? My grandparents' faces got paled at his fury. I had never seen him so angry. It must have been the same for my grandparents. My grandmother looked like she might burst into tears any moment. However, my grandfather gave a wry smile at my father's state. It infuriated me even more to see him laugh it off. Listen, Ryan. Calm down. He seemed to want to somehow control his son, to maintain his dignity as a father. Anyway, we're running out of time. Let's just have Olivia give up this time. And, well, let's just go, just us. The gate close is almost here. And we don't want to waste the cancellation fee for the hotel we booked. What? Wait, what is he even saying? Expecting Mom to give up this time? Whose fault does he think this is? Whose fault do you think this is? My inner thoughts and my father's shout coincidentally overlapped. My grandfather let out a startled yelp. That's enough. If you want to go, then just go on your own. No, you guys were supposed to come too. Oh, I'm not family either, so it's fine. Hannah. As I casually responded, her face showed shock. What? Did she think I would go along with them? As a daughter of a non-family mother, I am not family either. No way! You're family! You have a blood connection. My bond with my mother is stronger. At a loss for words, my grandparents could only snort in response. I turned to my father. Let's go home, Dad. Mom is waiting. Yeah, that's right. I'll call her soon after. Okay, let's do that. Carrying our bags, we headed for the exit, followed by my flustered grandmother. Hey, wait! What about us? What's going to happen to our trip? That's not our problem. Go on your own. And preferably, don't come back. What about the money? If you want to go, pay for it yourselves. No way! Her voice echoed around us. My grandfather stood dumbfounded. Leaving them behind, we headed home, where my mother was waiting. She was seemingly happy, perhaps because we had called from the car, but I didn't miss it. Her eyes were red. There were traces of tears. Those two, I'll never forgive them. Hey, Dad, I've been thinking. That's a coincidence, so have I. While hugging my mother, I spoke to my father and sensed him nodding in agreement. That night, my grandparents, having few money for the trip, returned home huffing and puffing. They could have taken a taxi by promising to pay upon arrival or borrowed money from a police station near the station to take the bus. But they didn't even know or understand such things. That's just like them. I guess it served as a good punishment. At first, they were extremely apologetic, but in front of my mother, they began to grow bolder again. We did nothing wrong. That woman is to blame. But my father had enough. That's it. We're finding a new house and moving out. We're cutting ties. I don't care about your old age. He made an unexpected declaration. My grandparents were pale, but his determination didn't waver. He temporarily moved my mother and me to a hotel and hurried to find a new house. He found a good property convenient for his commute and my school. Dad, you are so reliable. Then, on moving day, please, we apologize for everything up to now. Don't abandon us. My grandmother was begging, crying. What are we supposed to do if you two leave us? My grandfather was nearly in tears. I don't care. With a dismissive tone, my father left the grandparents in despair. Olivia, please. We're sorry for everything. We won't do it again. We'll recognize you as family. So let's go back to how things were, okay? Astonishingly, to whom Grandma pleaded was my mother. After all the terrible things they've done, how conveniently self-serving. Feeling disgusted, I saw my mother take my grandmother's hand. With a bright smile on my mother's face, just as her face lit up in response, my mother said, "Judgment from the grand white throne." Huh? Satan sees all the anger in this world. What are you talking about? The day to kneel before Satan is near, you'd better prepare your excuses. I hope you make it to heaven. Wait, hey, wait. Goodbye. Leaving the speechless grandparents behind, we got into the car. As we drove away from their house, I glanced back once to see them standing there, dumbfounded. They were getting further and further away, and I realized that might be the last time I see them. Inside the car, heading to a new beginning, as I chuckled at the passing scenery, my mother looked at me curiously. What's up? Well, just feeling a bit envious. Of what? Of Dad. He said, my precious wife, my beloved spouse, the most important family member to me. Really? Hannah! What are you spilling? Oh my, still so lovey-dovey after all these years. Really makes one envious. Come on, no kidding. My mother, blushing, lightly tapped my head. It didn't hurt, but I pretended it did and rubbed my head, then added, I wish I could have a boyfriend like Dad soon. Right after that. A boyfriend? His pained cry echoed through the car, holding the steering wheel. Did the luggage arrive? My parents are moving in with us starting today. Please take care of them. What a joke. Those were the first words that came out of him. As if I wasn't angry enough with James already. Just how selfish can James be? Well, that's that. I'm sure you'll be fine. I knew what James was up to. He wanted to keep me in check by bringing his parents over while hoping to receive various forms of support himself. Anger surged through me, but I quickly smirked. Oh, I've already moved out. What? I had to suppress my laughter at James's dumbfounded voice. It seemed he had forgotten who owned that house. My brother Liam, who was listening in, was also trying hard not to laugh. Did you forget? That house originally belonged to my grandparents, and it's in my name. Oh. So, whose permission were you planning to get for this cohabitation? The last thing I wanted was to let such people into my home. Natalie, who enjoys harassing me, and Joseph, who does what he pleases to his grandson without caring about his feelings. And so I continued. Did you think I didn't know anything? You'll pay the price for this. My name is Layla. I'm a 32-year-old working mother on parental leave. I have a husband, James, and a 1-year-old son, Oliver. Oliver has recently started walking on his own, so he requires constant attention. Yet, his toddling around is incredibly endearing, and it's comforting when he calls me with his small mouth. Oliver really loves his mom, huh? I met James, the father of our son Oliver, through work. My family runs a traditional bakery. Every day, we bake delicious bread, and with smiles, we sell it alongside my parents and brother. Excuse me, miss. Could I have your name and contact details? One day, James, a regular customer, approached me. Seeing James blush as he asked me out, I found him endearing, and we started dating. Your cooking is delicious. Is it? Thank you. Yeah. So, will you continue to cook for me? By my side. And so, we got married without any issues. My parents were overjoyed by our marriage, but my younger brother Liam always seemed to be looking on with skepticism. But he didn't particularly object, so I believe he's happy for us. Liam says he will take over the shop because living with us would just wear James out. So with my father's suggestion, the three of us are living in my deceased grandparents' house. We plan to watch Oliver grow up together here. One day, I took Oliver shopping with me. Oliver was holding my hand and toddling as hard as he could. Oh, Oliver! We came together. Now, say hello to your grandma. Oh my God, Oliver! When we bought bread at my parents' bakery, the regulars and my parents greeted Oliver with smiles. Oliver, unafraid of strangers, was always smiling. Since our house and the bakery are about an hour's drive apart, we visit my parents' home about once a month. And when Oliver and I, in high spirits, returned home. What? Don't tell me. The entrance door was unlocked. And there, familiar shoes greeted us. And, as expected, I sighed. Natalie, we did ask you to call ahead before coming, didn't we? Finally back, are you? Where on earth have you been? Ignoring my words, my mother-in-law laid there, watching TV. She probably entered using the spare key James had given her. I sighed again at Natalie, who never listens, no matter how many times I tell her. Come on, don't dawdle. Get on with the chores. I'll take care of Oliver. Saying so, she grabbed Oliver from me, telling me to clean up the mess from the snacks she had eaten. I wish she'd clean up after herself and not touch my son with her crumb-covered hands. But if I tell her so, it would result in her complaining, as if I'm dirty, and to Oliver, she would exaggerate and say, "What a scary mommy." Excuse me, Natalie. Please don't say weird things to Oliver. I retorted to Natalie and took sleepy Oliver to his room. Then, enduring Natalie's sarcastic remarks, I continued with the chores. Honestly, I wish I could just ignore Natalie, but if I take my eyes off her for even a moment, she would try to take Oliver and leave. You're such a bore. I'll be leaving now. Saying so, Natalie left. Which was a relief for me, so I saw her out with a smile. Natalie can be such a handful. Muttering to myself, I finished the chores I had left midway. I understand Natalie wants to see Oliver, her only grandchild. But I really wish she would stop coming to our house every day, using the spare key to let herself in. Hey, could you please take the spare key away from Natalie? What? Why? After James came home, I talked to him about Natalie. James looked troubled even after hearing me out. I glared at James. If you don't take the spare key from Natalie, I'll change the locks. And I won't give you a key this time. Okay, all right. I'll take the spare key from Mom. Are you happy? Pressured by me, James reluctantly agreed. I thought this would make things a bit better. But I was about to be disappointed. I'm going to take the spare key from her, so could you come to my parents' house with me this weekend? James asked me. Reluctantly, but wanting to see the key taken away myself for the sake of my mind's peace, I agreed to go to my in-laws with Oliver. You're finally here. There's plenty of housework for you, so get moving. We'll take care of Oliver. As soon as we entered my in-laws' house, Oliver was taken by my in-laws, and I was burdened with chores. Glancing at James, he stubbornly avoided my gaze. James tricked me. He set me up. Despite feeling betrayed, the odds were 3-1 against me. Wanting to leave the dusty and dirty in-laws' house as soon as possible, I quickly got to work. While I was cleaning, I heard Oliver's loud cries. Oliver! What's wrong? Rushing over in a panic, I found Oliver crying and squirming in Joseph's arms, reaching out towards me. I quickly took Oliver from Joseph's grasp. What did you do to Oliver? Quiet down. We didn't do anything to him. Yeah, that's right. When I glared, James, who had turned practically invisible, explained what happened. Apparently, Joseph grabbed Oliver as he was trying to follow me and forcibly held him back. Despite Oliver's desire to come to me, Joseph was tossing him around as if they were just playing. That's why Oliver was bawling. That's the reason I rushed over. Oliver is such a crybaby for a boy. Exactly. It's because he's being raised by a bad mother. He should be with us. I can't leave Oliver in a place like this. Excuse us. I hugged Oliver tightly and stormed out of the in-laws' house. I shouldn't have trusted James's words. I'm sorry, Oliver. Once home, I put the worn-out Oliver to bed and vented to my mother about everything. James, who I left at his parents' house, didn't even bother to contact us. About an hour later, the doorbell rang. Sis, can I talk to you? Liam? What's up all of a sudden? Mom said to check on you. I brought this as a gift. There stood Liam, holding a loaf of bread from our family bakery. He offered to do the housework for me, saying I must be tired. and cheerfully took care of Oliver when he woke up, brightening both our moods. You're a lifesaver, Liam. It's nothing. We're family, after all. Mom also said you can come back home anytime. Hearing that, I felt a deep sense of relief knowing I had such a supportive family. James returned a few hours after Liam left. He had the nerve to come back after eating at his parents' house. I've been hurt by all of this, and Oliver too. I'm really sorry. But it's not like my parents meant any harm. Oliver was crying. He would show signs of remorse when I got angry. But it didn't seem sincere, and I couldn't trust him anymore. I was even starting to think about divorce. James, wake up. James? When I woke up in the morning, James was nowhere to be found. Instead, there was a note left behind. I'm heading to Los Angeles for a business trip starting today. Such things should be said in person. Well, it's less irritating without him here. And taking some distance might help us cool down. If he's not here, changing the locks shouldn't be a problem, right? This will give us some peace for a while, Oliver. Oliver, looking at me laughing, laughed too, even though he didn't understand the words. With him by my side, I didn't need James. That was what I was thinking. So, we started living separately for a while. It seemed he was on a long business trip and very busy, making it difficult for him to return. I really miss seeing Oliver. And I miss your cooking. The distance between us led to reconciliation, and we were reporting to each other via video call once a week. Meanwhile, there was no contact from Natalie. Despite changing the locks, I half expected her to keep ringing the doorbell, but nothing happened. It was peaceful, yet inside me was this feeling of an eerie calm before the storm. Sis, something terrible has happened. That's when I got a call from Liam, sounding panicked. Listening to him, I learned a secret about James. That idiot. I'll never forgive him. Filled with anger, I began to prepare for retaliation. My parents, informed by Liam, also helped, and everything was ready 2 days later. Just as Liam and I were about to leave the house with Oliver, there was a knock. I have a delivery for you. Is that so? Please leave it here for now. A huge amount of luggage arrived at our house. The names on it were my in-laws. I immediately called James. Did the luggage arrive? My parents are moving in with us starting today. Please take care of them. What a joke. That was the first thing he said. As if I wasn't angry enough with James already. How selfish can James be? Well, that's that. I'm sure you'll be fine. I knew James's intentions well enough. He wanted to use his parents moving in as leverage over me, hoping to get various kinds of support from them. Rage surged through me, but I quickly smirked back at him. Oh, I've already moved out. What? James's dumbfounded voice was hard to hold back laughter at. Apparently, he had forgotten who owned that house. Even Liam, listening by, struggled to keep his laughter in check. Did you forget? That house originally belonged to my grandparents, and it's in my name. Oh. So, whose permission were you planning to get for this cohabitation? The idea of letting those people into my home was out of the question. Natalie, who enjoys harassing me, and Joseph, who does what he pleases to his grandson without caring about his feelings. And so I continued. Did you think I didn't know anything? You'll pay the price for this. Who would want to live with a husband who cheats while on business trips? Hold on, moved out? Exactly as I said. I've already sold the house. What? Why would you do something so drastic without telling me? My parents are supposed to arrive there this afternoon. It seemed he had planned to force the cohabitation on me without my consent. The reason Natalie hadn't dropped by unannounced recently must have been because she was busy packing for the move. I can only imagine how tough it must have been to clear out the cluttered in-laws' house. But that was none of my business. That's not my problem. Don't you dare joke with me. You're the one joking, aren't you? Your parents' belongings are in front of the entrance. Goodbye. With that, I hung up the phone. He tried calling back immediately, but I rejected the call and blocked all his contacts. Sorry for making you wait. It's fine. Let's go. I truly owed Liam. The revelation of James's affair came through him. Liam had spotted James arm in arm with an unfamiliar woman at Universal Studios in Los Angeles, where he had gone with his girlfriend, Emily. I hadn't seen James since the wedding, but I remembered him because he was a regular at the bakery. Liam managed to capture evidence of the affair and informed me. Then, with my parents' help, I quickly started making arrangements. Among the bakery's regulars was a private investigator who gathered further evidence. Through connections, a lawyer was introduced to me. A real estate friend of my father's quickly took action regarding the house. The house was renovated before you two moved in, making it very appealing. It's close to a school and within walking distance to a train station. So, it will sell high and it would be easy to find a buyer. True to his word, the house was sold quickly. And today was supposed to be the closing day, but instead, a massive amount of in-laws' belongings arrived. Welcome back, Layla. And you too, Oliver. Both of you, welcome home. You must be tired. Thanks to my parents' warm welcome, I let out a sigh of relief. I'm home. As I said it with a smile, Oliver too chirped in energetically. Everyone laughed in response. Now, all that's left is to fight back. Mama will do her best, so cheer for me, okay? To my words, Oliver showed his usual adorable smile. Layla. Are you the shop assistant today? That's right. Hope you buy a lot. Then, I started manning the storefront while taking care of Oliver. The regulars greeted me with smiles. Being back at the shop was a joyful time for me. It was thinking so to myself when James and the in-laws appeared. Layla! Layla! I stopped what I was doing, handed Oliver over to my mother, and confronted James and his parents. Let's not disturb the customers here, shall we step outside? I don't care about the other customers. Forget about them, how could you be so selfish? Oh, like going on a business trip and cheating is any better? My words caused the regulars to give James cold looks. Noticing that, James went silent for a moment, but he retorted back. We planned to live in that house, and we sold our home for it. Where do you expect us to live now? And according to James, it seems like Layla is the one who's been cheating. The in-laws started shouting that. I was taken aback by Joseph's words. Me, cheating? That's absolutely impossible. I am devoted solely to Oliver. What are you talking about? I've never cheated. Lies. A young man was seen leaving our house. A young man coming and going from that house, that could only be. Must be my younger brother, Liam. What? Your brother? Didn't I tell you? I have a younger brother. As we were talking, Liam appeared from the back. Seeing his face, James looked surprised. It's been since the wedding, James. What? That's really your brother? So? You thought I was cheating and without checking, and you cheated yourself? The business trip was real. However, he had met a woman there and developed a relationship. And without returning home, he chose to nurture his love instead. And then, you went into debt for her. What? At my words, the in-laws now turned their gaze sharply towards James. Meanwhile, James's face turned pale, wondering, how did you know? Unlike you, I did my investigation properly. Not satisfied with just our joint account money, you resorted to borrowing, right? Was it $20,000? When I checked the account after a long time, there were only a few dollars left, which was a shock. Basically, our living expenses were covered by the salary I had before going on maternity leave. That money was deposited into my personal account from before we were married, securely saved without being touched. For the joint account, We had agreed to deposit money regularly for Oliver's future expenses. But this is too much. Shall we let others decide then? My house, inherited from my grandparents and in my name, where James decided on his own to move his parents in, while he indulged in affairs and debts. Me, angered by James, selling my house and moving back to my parents. Who's in the wrong here, huh? At my words, the regulars glared at James and his family. Realizing they were at a disadvantage, James and his family backed down. Could you please leave? With a smile, I said that, and James and his party hastily left the store. After successfully driving them away, I received applause from the regulars, making me blush and smile shyly. Later, for the affair and for storming into the bakery during business hours, causing a disturbance, I demanded compensation from James and his family. James, already burdened with debt from his affair, and his inherently irresponsible in-laws had no money. Thus, they had to sell whatever they could to come up with the money. Days later, James came back to me, saying, "I truly regret everything. Please help me." Saying this, James clung to me desperately. I sighed deeply at James. Do you think I can trust your apologies? No, this time I really am. Enough. If you keep pestering me, I'll call the police. James looked dejected at my words. I gave him a cold stare. I know why you wanted to live with those two. James shivered at my words. The in-laws had always complained about their small house and wanted someone for housekeeping. Essentially, they wanted to live in that house with me being their housekeeper. James, always swayed by me, thought having his parents around would make me listen. If they managed to cohabit, he planned to use the saved money for his affair or debt repayment. He probably hoped they'd find my savings account from before I was single. Am I wrong? How do you know all that? Working in customer service means observing people. Plus, I married you because I loved you, even if you approached me first. If you love someone even once, you watch them closely, and living together, I've come to understand your way of thinking. James looked down. And then James, in anger, tried to hit me. Damn it! But his hand was stopped before it could reach me by someone who intervened. That's going too far. Liam glared sharply at James. Liam has been practicing martial arts since he was young, so he's in very good shape. James, gripped and glared at by my strong brother, completely lost his energy and slumped. Don't you ever show your face in front of my sister again! Shouted by Liam, James left with a pathetic sound. Thanks, Liam. Don't mention it. If anything happens, just let me know. I'll chase them away. Liam, saying this with a smile, seemed incredibly reliable. You used to be such a crybaby, always hiding behind me. Come on, stop it. I'm an adult now. And I have things to protect. Right. You definitely can't become like that man. Liam laughed at my words, of course. I knew he would protect Emily properly. Both of you, I need your help. Okay. Called by my mom, we returned to the store. After that, James, seemingly terrified of Liam, didn't show his face again. Furthermore, when the divorce papers were sent through a lawyer, he signed them without fuss. And so, we were officially divorced. Actually, the regulars were furious about what happened, saying, "How dare you make Layla suffer?" According to my mom, the regulars had spread the word about what happened at the store. It became a rumor, and employees at James's company got the wind of it. James quickly lost his place at the company due to the widespread knowledge. Under the cold gaze of his colleagues, James quit his job. I know I did wrong, so please help us. I learned that from a call from Natalie. I had completely forgotten I still had the in-laws' contact information saved because I've been so busy. What exactly do you want help with? That would be financial support, of course. Unfortunately, I'm not kind enough to help someone who has harassed me. With that, I hung up the phone. This time, I made sure to block the contact information properly. Afterward, James was unable to come up with the money for compensation and child support and ended up incurring even more debt. As for the affair partner, it seems she dumped James quickly after realizing he wasn't single. I heard rumors that the in-laws also had to take on debt and now work tirelessly from morning to night alongside James. Mommy. What's the matter, Oliver? On the other hand, we were living peacefully. We take turns looking after Oliver, enjoying our days with plenty of free time. And when I stand at the shop front, the regulars dote on me. Separating from James allowed us to find happiness. Let's play with Mama today. At my words, Oliver beamed with an angelic smile. Some time later, our family grew. Liam's wife, Emily, came to live with us. Emily adores Oliver. I'm so happy to have this little guy as my nephew. With Emily, I think we can build a happy home. Liam said this with a smile. If someone who is as kind as James chose Emily to be his partner, I'm sure everything will be fine. If there's ever a problem, next time, I'll be the one to help. Since then, there's been no contact from James and his family. Thanks to that, we've been able to enjoy a very peaceful life. All right, Mommy's going to do her best today, so you stay with Grandma, okay? From now on, the 5 of us will watch over Oliver's growth. And today, as always, I set out to make delicious bread with determination. Years later, our family grew even more. Liam and Emily got married and had a child. On top of that, someone who wanted to be with me appeared. If anyone tries to make Mommy cry, I'll protect her. Oliver has also grown and now says things cute like that. Together with Oliver, I will continue to run the bakery. Got into an accident? I can't go, I'm on a business trip now. A half-laughing voice of my husband is heard over the phone. And mixed with that, the sweet, ingratiating voice of a woman. Wonder what kind of business trip he's really on. Unforgivable. I'll definitely get him back double. My name is Jennifer. I'm 61 after retiring from a company that I worked for many years, and trying to enjoy my second life by joining a book reading circle. I was in drama club during my school days, so I think it's time to show off my skills, despite the long break. Well, because of COVID, I haven't had many opportunities such as visiting schools. Now I can read smoothly picture books, but when I was a bit younger than now, I struggled to read something. Specifically, my husband's mind. That must have been around 17 or 18 years ago. I lived happily with my husband Ronald, who is 2 years older than me, and our daughter Amber, who was in 11th grade. Well, I thought we were living happily. Around that time, I often felt Ronald was being cold to me. It wasn't like he was ignoring me, but conversations didn't expand, and he quickly went back to his room after meals. It seemed like he was avoiding interactions with me and our daughter. Jokingly, "Don't you be cold to me?" I asked. "Just tired." But was that really true? Then he would reply. The unease didn't go away easily. However, "Hey, you've been cold to me lately. I'm lonely, be kinder." I wasn't at an age to say such young girls' whims like that. Pretending to be an understanding wife, and I chose to leave Ronald as I thought he must have his reasons. Looking back now, I think the outcome would be the same whether I had pressed him or not. Meanwhile, Ronald's return time from work started to get later and later. He worked for a white company, where he used to come home on time almost every day. Even though he was a manager now, but he had been coming home later than when he was a general employee. Could this really be happening? It seemed Ronald was dining out, as the meals I prepared were always left on the table, wrapped up until next morning. Busy enough to work until past midnight, yet he found time to eat out. I started to sense contradictions in Ronald's behavior. Then, one day, when I was seeing Ronald off at the entrance, "Will you go home late again today? Maybe?" His indifferent response frustrated me, even with my usual patience. In fact, Ronald's nonchalant replies had become common. Lately, he hardly answered my questions, and I was holding back my dissatisfaction and enduring it. I feared that if we fought, He might never return home one day. If it happened, our daughter would surely be upset. I wanted to avoid the worst-case scenario, but... Hey, haven't you been treating me rough lately? Finally, I blurted out. I don't quite remember, but I think I glared at him without realizing it. Ronald's face was strained. If there's something wrong with me, I'll fix it. Let's talk. Your recent attitude, it doesn't just look like you're tired. Would he get angry? Or just ignore me? My lips quivered as I imagined the worst. But then, all right. Let's talk tonight. It's time to leave now. I have to go. Okay, take care. I didn't feel any warmth in Ronald's words, but I was relieved to know he was willing to talk. It'll be okay, we can still make things right. I thought, but that night, Ronald never came home. He didn't respond to my calls. It seemed like he was running away from our conversation. What a terrible man. Late at night, I finally received a single email. Going on a business trip, back on Tuesday. What is this? It's not a telegram from the old days. The next day, perhaps sensing my irritation, Amber, who was on winter break, asked me, Mom, do you remember our promise to go out together? She said, A promise? Yeah, the one about going out for a drive to practice my driving. You seem to be stressed out, Mom. How about we go to somewhere for a change of pace today? Oh, right, we had made that promise. Amber had just gotten her driver's license this summer, but we only had one car. Ronald often used it for work, and with Amber usually at school, she had no chance to practice driving. So, I had promised to accompany her for that practice during the winter break. Despite the break, I had been preoccupied with Ronald, so I completely forgot about it. Even she pitied for my accumulated stress. How pathetic. I felt apologetic and quickly agreed to go out with Amber. Oh no! It's my first time driving since driving school. I'm nervous. Stay calm and take it easy. Take a deep breath and try to do some stretches. Who does that in this situation? Really? Mom, you're so old-fashioned. Huh? As Amber opened the driver's side door, she suddenly made a puzzled face, crouched down, and picked up something. Hey Mom, this is... What she showed me was a long, glittering fake nail. Both of us were speechless. Neither of us wears fake nails, so whose could it be? The last person to use this car was... Dad, right? Yes. We got into the car, and although Amber started driving, we couldn't hide our disturbance. A fake nail found in the car last used by Ronald. The only thing that made sense was Ronald's infidelity. Since when? With whom? What kind of person? I didn't want to know the details of Ronald's affair, although I couldn't help but be curious about who it was. Amber was probably thinking the same thing, as both of us fell completely silent. And that's why our reaction was delayed. Amber! Watch out! I shouted, but it was too late. The car, misjudging a left turn, was crashed head-on into the wall beyond the guardrail. Mom! Mom, wake up! I'm sorry. Mom! Amber, are you okay? It seemed I had briefly lost consciousness from the shock. When I opened my eyes, I saw Amber's tear-streaked face. I'm okay. Mom! I'm so sorry. Call the police and... Dad. Okay, I got it. In a panic, Amber pulled out her phone. But she was confused by the first accident. She called Ronald before the police. Dad? Mom's been in an accident. Huh? An accident? You know, I'm on a business trip, can't do anything. Handle it there, will you? Hey, you're on the phone with me now. Your wife. Come on, just drop it. Ronald's unusually cheerful voice leaked from the phone, and I understood what he was saying. The ingratiating voice of a woman could also be heard. After being cut off. How could he? I saw Amber, she hung her head down. I'm okay. all I could say to reassure her. After that, I don't remember anything. It seems I lost consciousness again, and when I woke up, I was in the hospital. Then came Tuesday, the day Ronald said he'd be back from his business trip. The intercom rang incessantly. Opening the door, I found an unsettled Ronald. "Welcome back." Ronald, greeted at the entrance, looked surprised. "You said you had an accident." "What the heck, you look fine. Don't lie." Furious at being deceived, Ronald spat out those words and tried to enter the house. Amber passed away. Ronald, who had been storming towards me, stopped in his tracks and turned around. "What?" "Come with me to this room." I led a bewildered Ronald by the hand to the room. "Wait, explain. Weren't you got into the accident?" "I just lost consciousness. It was a mere concussion." "But Amber..." "She was fine after the examination, but last night she suddenly started feeling unwell, and by the time I woke up this morning, she was already..." "You're lying, right?" "I was waiting for you to come back to see her one last time." As soon as Ronald entered the room and froze when he saw pale-faced our daughter lying down on the bed. "Amber? It can't be true. Amber!" As Ronald tried to cling to our daughter, I stopped him. "Wait! I understand how you feel, but since she passed away at home, the police need to perform an autopsy. Don't touch Amber until the police arrive." "I don't care about that." "Stop it! Let me go!" "Please, calm down. It's for Amber's sake." Ronald, overwhelmed by shock, slumped to the floor powerlessly. Why Amber?" Ronald began to cry bitterly. "Tell me, would you have cried like this if I had met the same fate?" "What kind of question is that? Of course, I would." "Then why didn't you rush to us when Amber called you about our accident?" "I was on a business trip. I heard a woman's voice on the phone. It was quite sweet." "That was a client." "Hey, you usually do desk work and have no sales or entertainment duties. What kind of business trip were you on with a client? What kind of work?" "It's enough. Stop nagging. We should be focusing on Amber now." "Is this the client in this photo?" I showed a photo on my phone, and Ronald was at a loss for words. On the screen, there was a beautiful young woman with striking features and suited black hair. When did you find?" That reaction tells me I'm right. No. I don't know any woman like that." "Then what about this?" I showed Ronald the fake nail I found in the car, catching him off guard. At that moment, Ronald lost words. "This belongs to her, right? You can't say you don't know her now, can you?" "Where did you find that?" "In the car. Amber found it. Both of us were so shocked we got distracted, and then the accident happened, all because of you." "That's your fault for not paying attention. Don't act all high and mighty." The moment Ronald retorted. "No woman could stay calm after discovering her husband's affair. Don't be so shameless, old man." "What?" Surprised by the voice of his daughter, who was supposed to be eternally asleep, Ronald turned around in shock. But there she was, lying down motionless just as before. "What was that just now?" Ronald's face turned pale at this bizarre situation. "With a father's misdeeds so grievous, maybe she can't ascend to heaven." "A ghost?" "No, a zombie." "No matter the form, she's still our daughter." Wait. This is different." "What if she's come back to life? Aren't you happy?" "That's impossible. It's scary. What if something that isn't Amber has come into this house?" Ronald, genuinely terrified, clung to me. He always was bad with horror. Then, our daughter slowly sat up and hugged Ronald from behind. Dad," she said with a smile, hugging him. Ronald, reacting to his daughter's mischief, "Eek!" let out a high-pitched and fled to a corner of the room. Ha. You totally fell for it. Got scared for real. I've been alive the whole time." Ronald looked at us in astonishment during Amber had burst out laughing. What do you mean? This is what you get for cheating, old man. We set up this whole act. Normally, I would scold Amber for her words, but she probably doesn't even want to call him dad anymore. This time, I thought. Oh, and she calls Ronald as an old man, so I just forgive this time. Well, she said including man, so it's okay. I decided to let it go. I would like to call him something much worse. Amber thoroughly explained to the utterly bewildered Ronald the entire sequence of events. So, both Mom and I just got examined and we're fine. Alive really well. I looked up people associated with your company on social media, old man, and found someone with the same fake nails. I thought, maybe she was, and when I checked her posts, there was a photo with a man resembling you. Plus, on the same day you didn't come home, she blatantly posted about a date with her boyfriend. And on the day of the accident, she wrote about being on a trip with her boyfriend. It's no coincidence. So, Mom suggested me pretend to be dead to scare you, thinking you'd slip up under pressure. Scared you, didn't we? About me and Amber's sly smile, Ronald. I was really worried. You two are the worst. Agitated, exclaimed. Well, maybe going as far as doing death makeup to look pale and lying down about an autopsy was a bit much, but I don't want to hear it from someone who cheated. Amber nodded vigorously at my words. If you were really concerned, you would have rushed over the moment we called. Your sudden act of a worried father doesn't resonate at all. You must have enjoyed your affair trip, right? Didn't want to leave the young woman? A man who prioritizes his desires over his family, a rotten to the core guy. I don't care about you anymore. Ronald was frozen by our daughter's strong logic and biting sarcasm. I admit it, I did wrong by cheating, but being blamed by Amber is tough. She's my only daughter. What? So you want us to forgive you, Dad? Yes. How pathetic he is. What do you think, Mom? Amber looked at me intently. Well, first, I want to know how you met this woman and hear all the details. Hey! Mom wants to know, so spill it immediately, old man. Fueled by anger, Amber, now more of a bandit than a high school girl, grabbed Ronald by the collar, making him tremble. Additionally, Amber reacted by saying, I accidentally touched him. She rejected the hand that had touched Ronald as if it was contaminated. Needless to say, Ronald was so shocked that he teared up. Deciding to come clean, Ronald began to recount how he met this woman. Their meeting was at a company event. The younger woman admired Ronald's work and approached him proactively. She claimed to want only to talk about work as a junior colleague. But Ronald, flattered, decided to pursue her. The woman, charmed by the attention from someone she admired, accepted Ronald's advances, but she was single. Moreover, she was hoping to marry Ronald, leading to recent tensions since Ronald hadn't intended to destroy his family for a fling. He explained that not speaking to me was due to his anxiety about their relationship being discovered, fearing that I might notice his irritability. The trip, which I thought was for an affair, was actually to appease her mood, as he candidly admitted. As for the fake nail, it was likely deliberately left by the woman, who was growing impatient for marriage, hoping that its discovery would lead to our divorce. If you choose me and over her, I might consider not divorcing you. Of course. With Amber here. I choose you, no question. Then call her here right now. I need to hear her say it's over, face to face, to believe you. I understood. 2 hours later, Ronald's mistress, Sarah, arrived at our house in response to his call. I said, "You must be Sarah, right?" Then Sarah, openly hostile, declared, "Whatever you do, I won't break up with him." Sarah responded with open hostility. "No. I want to break up. I want to start again with my family." At Ronald's words, Sarah's face turned pale. "You're kidding, right?" She repeatedly asked Ronald in disbelief. "Sorry. I like you, Sarah, but not enough to pay alimony to my wife and live with you." Wait, Did he say outrageous statements? It's not about me or Amber, but just about not wanting to pay alimony? Both Amber and I were appalled. That's terrible. I was serious about you. Sarah was pounding on Ronald's chest. Indeed, Ronald had been terrible, and her feelings were understandable. Hit him harder, enough to affect his ribs. I found myself secretly cheering for her at that moment. Ronald, looking troubled, simply let it happen without resistance. That's how it is, Sarah. Ronald won't be yours, and he will pay alimony. Also, write a pledge saying you won't be with Ronald anymore. Don't be ridiculous. I absolutely refuse. Please, Sarah. Initially resistant to my demand, Sarah seemed to understand the futility after Ronald's plea. Fine. She weakly responded and began writing the pledge as I had instructed. Then, right after making Ronald write a pledge with the same contents. Ah, good. So we do not get divorce, right? Ronald, still trembling, quickly finished writing his pledge next to Sarah, who was still writing hers, and then blurted out a tactless remark. Even the usually composed Sarah's face turned pale. You're despicable. And muttered that. It must have been a moment of realization for Sarah, where 100 years of love could fade in an instant. A good riddance, indeed. No divorce is a no-go. What do you mean? I mean, no divorce is not happening. We're getting divorced. What? You said you'd consider not divorcing. Yes, I considered it, and I decided we should divorce. What? That's not fair. After making me write this pledge. Well, I never really considered not divorcing him, but that's a secret. Don't worry, once we're divorced, that pledge becomes meaningless. So, what will you do? Restart with Sarah? Why would I do that? Wait, should I? Sarah, should we try again? Ronald gazed at Sarah with an unmistakable ulterior motive in his eyes. However, the look that Sarah returned was incredibly cold and detached, a stark contrast to Ronald's intentions. Are you joking? You easily agreed to write that pledge to break up, showing how little you cared. And now you want to turn things around because you don't want to be alone? Too late. No, that's not what I meant. Watching their exchange, Amber and I couldn't help but smirk. Honestly, I'd be upset if Ronald just quickly moved on with his affair partner after our divorce. Amber felt the same. I wanted Ronald to experience the same despair of being abandoned that my daughter and I felt when he betrayed us. That's why my daughter and I came up with this covenant strategy. Ronald is a man of high pride. And it was easy for my daughter and me to foresee that he would refuse a divorce. So, we decided to use the threat of divorce as leverage, gaining control over the situation and guiding Ronald's actions to our advantage. Sarah's feelings for Ronald would surely plummet after seeing him agree so easily to part ways. I never expected Ronald to reveal such despicable traits, but well done, Ronald. Perfectly played the fool. Ugh. Thanks for nothing. I'll pay whatever it takes to get rid of you. I was foolish to fall for a man like you. Wait, Sarah! I was wrong, let's start over. But Sarah pushed away the desperate Ronald clinging to her. Oh, so I'm no longer of interest to you? No, that's not what I meant. You won't reconsider the divorce? No. You only cared about avoiding alimony, right? I thought your pride wouldn't allow you to be dumped, but I guess money comes first. That's a miscalculation on my part. I do love you. So what am I to you, really? Sarah glared sharply at Ronald. Oh, that's scary. Finally, Ronald was left speechless. Ha ha ha. It's pathetic, old man. Rejected by both women in the end. Well, who would want such a man? Amber burst into laughter. Give me a break. Leaving Ronald to hold his head in his hands, saying, Sorry, but even if Mom decided to get back with you, I wouldn't allow it. I don't want to acknowledge you as a father. It's creepy. Perhaps shocked most by his daughter's words, Ronald broke down. Please forgive me. I'm sorry." And then, he burst into heavy tears. Seeing a grown man cry over his own mistakes was, to say the least, off-putting for Sarah, Amber, and myself. There was no way we could ever have feelings for such a big baby. Afterward, as declared, we demanded alimony from both Sarah and Ronald and proceeded with a thorough division of property in the divorce. From Sarah: "Thanks to you, I've been able to get out of a bad relationship. I'm sorry for the trouble, and thank you." Later came to me with a box of sweets in hand and said, "It was a surprising turn of events to be thanked by the mistress, but in a way, it was a relief that the divorce didn't leave a completely bitter taste." As for Ronald, let me see Amber. He contacted me several times, asking to see our daughter, but ugh, so annoying. Just block him. So, following Amber's wishes, I blocked him and continued to ignore him. Now, Amber is married and, incredibly, the mother of triplets. I can't handle 3 kids on my first try. Although she was initially overwhelmed, she had become a splendid, resilient mother. Her husband is a genuinely good man, helping with childcare and household chores. I doubt he would ever cheat like Ronald did. As for me, although I joined a book reading circle, COVID limited my opportunities to showcase my readings. However, I found joy in reading to my grandchildren. At first, my 3 grandchildren showed no interest in picture books, making me lose confidence. But now, just by me picking up a picture book, "What story are you reading today?" Now, they gather around excitedly whenever. I hope they grow up to be kind and fond of reading. After experiencing the biggest turmoil of my life, I'm now thoroughly enjoying a peaceful and fulfilling second chapter.